The Trump effect has shaken most of the Arab world. Stock markets in the region plunged on his victory day, except in Egypt, where the stock exchange went green. Actually, the market here posted record gains of 25%, not seen before. It is influenced by a positive meeting between Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and US President-elect Donald Trump in New York last month. The two men pledged closer ties and more cooperation if Trump wins elections. It's a far contrast from the tense relations Sisi has had with President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, which reflected on the economy.
Unfortunately, the last 8 years of Obama and the Democratic Party were full of problems not only for Egypt. The US cancelled economic aid to us. We saw what happened in Libya, Iraq, Yemen, and the whole of the Middle East. We hope Trump will change the American policy that was aggressive towards the Middle East people.
Egypt is rebuilding its shattered economy. International financial institutions have been supporting the country's reforms. The IMF has approved the loan request for $12.5 billion, and experts believe the Trump administration will not hinder such efforts.
For the US, there will be no change concerning the IMF because this is a loan that Egypt has guaranteed it will repay. This is set and agreed. I even expect more investment from the next administration.
Abdel Fattah el-Sisi did not meet with Barack Obama since he took office in 2014, but he has already invited Trump to Cairo. There's a good feel factor here that the Trump presidency will give a boost to Egypt's economy. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
Let's examine that funding deal from the IMF in a little more detail. Daniel Rangers joins me now live from Washington, D.C. with more data on the story. Daniel, the way this deal was designed, it had a very strong bilateral financing component of roughly $5 billion, $6 billion. What is the purpose here by the IMF in forcing Egypt to spread out the lending risk in this particular deal?
From the fund's perspective, the fund acts as a sort of stabilizing mechanism for the entire global economy. So when there's an emergency, they can come in and provide funds. So what they did after 2008, when there was a big run on emergency funds for understandable reasons, they wanted to bring in a sort of bilateral element so that they could maintain large reserves themselves. That large reserve provides a reassurance to the global economy that the IMF is always going to be able to provide that. From the country's perspective, and Reuters is reporting that those countries include China, the UAE and the G7 countries, all interested, I think, in helping Egypt to stabilize. It's pretty straightforward. And it also, because it's done through the IMF, it's done in a way where they know that the IMF lending standards and all this rigor is there in place. They don't have to manage that, but they get the value for money in helping Egypt to stabilize and recover.
Indeed. Speaking of stabilization, though, I mean, the Saudis, barely a couple of months ago, just said, look, we'll give you 700,000 tons of refined petroleum products every month to the Egyptian government. Now they've turned around and said, actually, no, we're not going to do that. Doesn't that pose a risk to the goal of cutting Egypt's fiscal deficit?
I think the understanding with the Saudi issue is that there are two reasons the Saudis were discontent. One is the economic management. The other are diplomatic, strategic reasons in the region. Now, on the economic management front, if the IMF program works and if there is reassurance to the global markets and if there are reforms, then the Saudis can be much more reassured about that. On the diplomatic front, that's up to Egypt and Saudi Arabia to sort those things out. But fundamentally speaking, I think what the IMF and other countries are trying to do now is to provide short to medium-term financing to help Egypt transition towards much more of a sustainable economy that is not reliant on other countries.
Indeed. One last question for you, Daniel. With the $12 billion coming from the IMF and another $6 or so billion coming in from other partners, what are the other reforms, especially in taxes and business regulation, that Egypt has to deliver as part of this deal?
Well, the VAT tax is a very important thing to see that implemented. Along with that, they are saying that they don't want the Egyptians to touch the social programs, that they want to maintain those, important to do. And then there are things like corruption agenda issues, where they want that money to go to the right places, for money to be less leaky out of the country, and for tax collection to improve, and as well to create a much more open, business-friendly environment so investors feel that they are able to park their money, invest their money in an economy that is going in the right direction and an economy that is managed in the right way.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for the update. That's Daniel Rangers, of course, live in Washington, D.C.